Welcome into the SorareData NBA show, episode 3. I am Andrew Laird, head of content here at SorareData, joined once again from the gentlemen who were kind enough to join us for the first episode. Alex Hooper, Tilt City FC, Keith Jamison, Gator Guy 231. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming back. What's funny is that, like, as soon as the first show ended, we were like, man, we could have gone for hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys should come back. And here you are. So thank you for taking the time. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about today.
Probably not enough time, once again.
It feels that way. But I think it's good and bad. And we have like good and not as great things to talk about today. It seems like there's a huge focus on card prices now. And I talked about this a little bit on the Monday soccer show, football for some of you. And I didn't want to talk about NBA at the time, but it was like I had to get it out. And so I think we're going to discuss that a little bit today.
Yeah.
But have you guys, I mean, I know that you guys aren't like the sky is falling in terms of like prices, but like what has been kind of the response that you've had, not to the prices, but to actually the reaction to the prices?
Ooh, that's a good one. Like our personal response or what we're seeing?
Like when you see people who are focused on prices, which for a lot of players are going down, like what do you think about when you see that? And have you like said anything about it to people that like to make them to either agree with them or the opposite?
I'll jump in. Then I want to hear Alex's too, but I want to jump in because I actually just thought of this as you asked the question and hadn't really thought about it before. But when I joined Sorare a year and a half ago, football side, completely and utterly consumed with card prices. So I kind of understand it to that aspect of why somebody that's brand new would be completely consumed their card value. Like looking at their SorareData, gallery valuation every 2 seconds and going, why did it go down? Why all this stuff? Like the sky is falling, all of that. Like, I think the more I think about it in that aspect, I completely get it. And all this should have been predictable and warranted. But at the same time, I don't know how many analogies we want to go into later that you and I have talked about, but like at the crux of Sorare is the game. The word that I see over and over again that I don't like is investment. Because it's a game. That's the whole thing of it. And if you play long enough, what I have noticed over and over again, the people that don't overreact to prices and play the game and just work on optimizing their lineups and optimizing the game, they do quite well. So I think that'll be my stance on it.
So kind of to what you said, and he's gone. So when I started, I was pretty much just putting together a football threshold team, and I was very consumed with the investment. And like, that 0.02 ETH to me was a big tick up. And now that I've kind of divested more from football and I'm in baseball and basketball pretty exclusively, I don't care about that number because I know I just gotta like win once, and then all of a sudden I'm all right. So I'm used to the prices falling. The guys that I buy, I was buying guys either in football for specialists and all of that, and they were tanking anyway because that's the name of that game, or baseball where, it was just a constant downtick because that was the market. So I'm used to it. I haven't really seen a lot of reaction just because I'm trying to stay off Twitter. But I understand it, and it's kind of wild. I mean, you were sharing some of those prices that people were buying and selling for, just like panic selling and getting out of the market already. And it's just kind of a misunderstanding of this particular market, I guess.
So I don't think it's really possible to ignore the value of your cards as you play the game. Like, because like that's kind of how we keep score. Like, the idea is that you like put a certain amount of money in, and how you do in the game, which the way that we are looking at it is like rewards, like you win cards, and like that's the best way to like increase your value. That like you bought these cards and now you've won something. So like you actually haven't sold your cards and you still have those. And now you have this other card and we just go from there. And so I don't think there's any other way to figure out how you're doing in the game other than gallery values or just like the number of cards you have. Like, oh, I bought 5 and now I have 8. And so like I'm winning. But I understand why the value affects so many people. Mm-hmm. What I struggle with, and I think that Top Shot played a part in it for a lot of the new people, which is funny because it was like what Top Shot was, that people were like, oh, I bought this thing for $10 and I just sold it for $1,000. And when it was new, that's what they did. And like Sorare NBA is new, so like that should work again. And it's not working the same way because they're like completely different things. So like we talked not on stream, just like of some of the cards that we've seen people are buying. And it's like, oh, they bought a card for $300 yesterday and they sold it today for $220. And it's like, that's how you lose at this game. Like you're not, and I understand the idea if like you think that card is going from 300 to 100 and you're like, I'd rather get 220 now. But it's wild to me, to make that determination like hours after you bought the card.
Yep.
Like it's just, everything just seems so short-sighted. And there are people like it's like hardly anger, but I could see people when they're like, man, card prices are really dropping. And people come to them and they're like, it's only been a week. You just got to wait. And it's like, well, that doesn't make you feel better. The card prices aren't going up just because I have to wait. Right. But like, that's the answer. Like, there's no reason to think that something you bought today should be worth like a lot more later today. And that's how it feels like people are responding.
But I mean, that's also like it almost feels like the crypto component of things is that like people expect that, that short run thing. I'm like, I think I saw it on Twitter, the place that Alex wants to avoid. But Alex, we are going to bring up Twitter and that picture before I leave this stream, period. End of story. But somebody like mentioned, I want to say it was like on a comment on one of the threads that Laird was asking a million questions on. But
so any
like,
Twitter thread, really.
That's about any Twitter thread, right? Where there's disagreement. But
that's the Socratic method. He's just going Socratic.
That's right.
Right. But it was like I think somebody might even ask the question, like, how do you calculate your return? Like, the person was talking about his investment. So they go, okay, if I'm going to go investment wise, how are you calculating your return? And I think the response from the person complaining was, well, my card was worth 100 and now it's worth 50. And the person responded back like, no, what was the return? And that's like one of the hardest parts, I think, where you're getting to too, is, okay, you bought this card. And yeah, in a day, something happened or, sentiment changed and it dropped. And that's really, really sucky. Like nobody's here is saying, oh, just deal with it. Like we don't enjoy, like I don't enjoy high pointing a graph. Like in SorareData showing me that I high pointed a graph. But at the same time, if all of a sudden I can now yield, this week alone I can win a Kevin Durant rare, or next week I can win a LeBron James limited, and now I can recoup that investment. Yeah, it stinks that card's value went down, but that card's worth 50, and now I won $150 with it for the $100 investment. Well, then that $100 investment's worth it, right? Actually, almost double.
I think the especially funny thing about the short term, like someone expecting to yield more at the end of the day, is if you understand this game at all, the ebb and flow of the players' worths are going to be kind of up and down way more than any of the other sports.
Right.
Like it's all about when they settle back into their L10 and when they get minutes. Like at some point they are going to kind of boom, unless they just get benched and toil into obscurity and go play in Europe or whatever. But to even aside from the yield component, like I bought a John Collins at 0.05, and right now he's selling for like 0.01 because he matched his L10, and that was kind of where his ceiling was going to be. And then now it's going to slowly come down, and eventually he's going to be back towards a 20, 25. He's going to put up a 50, and all of a sudden that price is going to go up. And it's a different dynamic than like in football where a guy gets benched and all of a sudden you're like, all right, I either got to foul this dude or I got to just wait until he gets a better opportunity. And this is like, now he's in his period where he's got to play his way through it. He's either got to play his way above it or just play his way down until he's playable again. So it's just an interesting dynamic, and the top shotification of it is short-sighted in a number of ways.
Yeah, I don't want to like blame Top Shot for it. It just felt like, I mean, it's probably a general NFT thought, and like NFTs are getting crushed now anyway. So, but yeah, so one of the things that I talked about on Monday that I'll bring up here, because not everybody watches that show, is the calls from a lot of people who are like, they like sort of have to slow the auctions down. There are just too many auctions. The secondary market is basically dead. And the reason why everything's dead is because there are 100 auctions a day, it feels like, of every player. And that's where I think that's where some of the negative sentiment comes, because it's like, hey, I bought this card and I'm not competing against other people who have bought cards to sell mine. I'm competing against Sorare now, because it's like, I want to sell this card for $25, but Sorare is selling 10 of them today, and all of them could be less than what I want. And like, that's the reason why the constant auctions are viewed as bad by people who are selling cards. And then this whole like 5% transaction fee on everything is just on top of that. They're like, now I have to make even more to compete with the auctions. So the point that I made on Monday, that I'm not going to like go really far into, but basically the Sorare NBA game is so new, and the primary focus is to get more people to play the game. Like, that's what we want to do. They want more users to play this game. And the way you do that is to offer the most number of ways to play the game, which is to offer the most number of cards you can. And if you slow auctions, you are limiting the number of people who can come up and play. It's like, oh, I want to buy a Giannis today. Well, there's only like 4 people who are selling Giannis cards on the secondary market. They're all triple what he sold for yesterday. So you either have to pay triple or you're just not going to play. Or you just offer a bunch of auctions, and now anybody who wants Giannis can go get Giannis. Yep. And at this point of the game, I mean, it's like, what are we, 3 weeks in? Like, the goal is to get more people in, and the auctions are the easiest way to do it. Yep. Does that hurt people who bought earlier auctions for higher prices? Absolutely. Do those people have to sell their cards for half of what they bought them for? Nope. Can they play them in the game? Yes. And like, theoretically, if you're early, you have more XP on your card, unless you ignore training, which don't ignore training. But like, that's why I had this, like, that was my reaction to like, they have to stop the auctions because they're killing the secondary market. And it's like, this wasn't even like a thriving secondary market. Like, we haven't had time for it yet. Like, we need more people to play the game. We know how many cards they could mint. Like, that's the other thing, is that we know that they could make 5,000 limiteds of every player. And if
how are they going to get them out there?
If they minted 5,000 of every player, we'd all be like, all right, that they must think that there are enough users for that. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means all these people are playing. Yep. And so the early, like, they need to slow the auctions. They need to not mint as many cards. They need to help us out. They need to do ETH, or else nobody's going to buy these cards. Like, the cards are getting sold. Lots of people are buying them. The prices may be going down now, but like, if more people are playing the game, then like, we all win in the longer term than 3 weeks. And
That's again the way it's going to ebb and flow. When they turn that faucet off, all of a sudden my Mo Bamba, who might get 20 minutes here and there, and like someone's going to need him to play the game, and might just be like, maybe he'll pop off, and all of a sudden he's worth at least what I bought him for. And when you look at it through a window of like 6 weeks or whatever it is, I don't know how you judge a market that way. I don't mean to beat a dead horse or anything with ebbs and flow in the long term, but I mean, like, that's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that a lot of people ignored early on, maybe they didn't ignore, but like we talked about it on the first show, like the whole Keegan Murray thing, that prices in the game are really dependent on how effective a player will be in the game.
Sure.
And I'll give Keith some credit here for being early on the Cam Thomas train. And so he's like, everyone's complaining about prices, blah, blah, blah. It's like everyone's saying you can't make any money. And then Cam Thomas, who has kind of come back down, but like we see this huge spike for a player that like nobody really knew, or not that nobody knew, but like nobody was buying, obviously. And then all of a sudden he completely spikes. And like he was like are we calling him a cheat code? Like whatever he was.
For a week he was.
Code, right. And so we got to this point where, yes, if you had like recognized that situation, you could have profited from that. And instead, everyone's like looking at Jokic's falling price while ignoring like his falling fantasy scores also. And they're just like, oh, got to blow the whole thing up. And it's just like there are opportunities here, and I think it's just that too many people are ignoring them.
I do think it's really interesting. I think one of the funniest parts about this game that I've noticed so far, because like you said, I've been kind of trying to like tread the water in terms of like being able to like pick up some flips like Cam Thomas, like right when we saw Kyrie go down. We obviously knew there was going to be huge openings. A lot of people ran to Sumner. Sumner hit a big spike, and he's been starting. And then Patty Mills hit a big spike too, because they're like, oh, Patty Mills, we know this guy forever. And actually, it was like, I remember me and, on the DFS side, my DFS content partner, we're like, man, I really hope this opens up for Cam Thomas. And I was actually late to Cam Thomas. Like, you could have gotten him probably one game before where I did. And I think the first game he pops off like 28 minutes, huge volume scorer in college. And it's like, oh, he's actually the bump.
Yeah.
It wasn't the other two guys. It was this. And so I was like messaging Laird over, I think like my fourth or fifth beer. I think I was trying to figure out, I think it was my first message. Is Bud Light Lite or LIGH? And I'm like, oh,
that's exactly how it started.
And I'm like, oh, by the way, I bought like 6 Cam Thomases or 5 Cam Thomases. And you're like, why? I'm like, just look at his minutes. And then it was like, I think it was the next day, everybody realized his L10 was 6. And he had just gone off for, I think, 28 or 30 fantasy points a game. And he's now the hip guy, or the guy that you need. And what's really cool about this game is you can find opportunities like that, maybe make a little bit of extra ETH balance by taking advantage of those situations. And then I'm trying to do it. Like, I bought a Jokic on like the second week. So I think that Jokic is very down from where I bought it, but I'm gaining XP on him. He's still going to be a card that's going to make me, I think, new cards in the future. And on top of that, I can supplement that difference with some flipping opportunities too, because I am invested and I am paying attention to what's going on. So I'm kind of taking the market as that too. There's still, I personally am not finding problems selling cards that are in demand.
The actual right cards?
Well, isn't that kind of funny though? Like when we say the rate cards, like for a given game week, it's actually, like Alex said, completely off the L10, completely off of who's going to benefit the game the most, which in a way is sort of a perfect like exactly what from like a mini Sorare economy. That's how it should work, right? The card that you need the most to win should in fact be the most valuable in that given moment.
Yeah, I think so when you bought those Cam Thomas cards, what was your expectation in terms of holding it?
I know How long was it going to hold it? Or
Yeah. Like, did you think I'm selling this card soon?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't need 5 of them. I mean, there's not that many competitions to play in. I didn't want him for my training. I mean, I think we've seen enough to know too that a low L10 guy, as soon as the low L10 is no longer a low L10, the value is gone. I mean, that's why I've been, whether I was with you on a show or like Quinny and Ellis's, like I said, like this is a very DFS type of game. It's very daily fantasy game more than the football side of things is, because on those type of guys, I don't think you need to be in and out of a Jokic or an Embiid or a Giannis very much. Like they're very stable in terms of what they're going to produce for you. But a Cam Thomas type, it's great if he keeps putting up 25 to 30 fantasy points. But the moment that his L10 is 25 to 30 and he's putting up 25 to 30, he's no longer a good card.
Yeah. Yep.
And especially if Kyrie comes back, God knows what's happening there. But the moment that happens, now he's really dead. That's really, really a cruddy card for a while. So
right. Now you have an L10 of 25 and he's scoring 8.
And you're like, it's even playing tonight?
Right.
Like, so I think that is one hard part where I do think it's not like Sorare's job to educate, but like I think people playing kind of have to understand those things. I mean, it was what we talked about Keegan Murray, the first ever show here, and all the other ones we did, right? It was like all these people are rushing to Keegan Murray. It's like, as long as they understand that value could be, I think me and you were the first ones to call for like, it could be like literally 90% off. I think a lot of people were like, oh, fall by half. And me and you were kind of like, no, it could go like all the way down to comparable type of players.
Yeah.
So I think as long as people understand that.
Yeah. I think the weird thing about Murray, and I think what people have started to finally realize is they were like, well, he's like a good player. And so like, I'll still use him. Like, it'll be fine. But like, he wasn't that. Like,
no,
fine really just like isn't how you win this game. Like you can't get by with enough fine. Like, particularly with somebody like Murray, if he was like, yeah, he's got an L10 of 28 and he's scoring 25, like that really does you no good. Like at some point in your lineups, you're like, I just need like raw points, but like that's not how you get them. And so the price is obviously like really affected. Alex, have you tried to focus at all on like trading contender friendly players?
I haven't, just because of where my ETH was when everything launched. It was just a slow sell off of other assets and then buying things that made sense. And now my gallery is kind of to the size where I can make those sorts of decisions. But no, I was mostly trying to find those guys and grab them early and play them, like Blake Wesley, and RIP to his knee. But so I was focused on it, but not for the flipping aspect as much. And like and Keith knows this about me, I detest like the amount of attention you have to pay to like NBA DFS. Sure. Mm-hmm. And I don't have time for it. I like sitting on my spreadsheet and dividing things by other things and chasing the guy's minutes and paying attention to rotations is not my bag. I just like to hit that refresh button, see the projected minutes, say this guy is way underpriced, and grab him and play him. So yeah, it just hasn't been my bag doing that. I've never had fun with it. And I was actually going to ask, and I don't mean to steer away the conversation or anything, but do you guys think that this game is a little too involved for enough casual people to get into it, like to actually have success?
Laird, you go. I'm already nodding, so I already answered if people are watching, but I'm curious here.
That was actually my initial thought. Like there's way too much work involved. And the more that I've played, I actually think it is not like, I think you can play it casually. Like I actually do. And so you're not going to be as successful as people who play it really seriously, but I think that's what should happen. Like,
Sure.
if you put in more time and effort and money into this game, like you should have better results. But I do think it is easier to play casually than I did at the beginning.
Okay.
And I think part of it is basically what I did this week. And I will completely admit that I submitted a champion limited lineup that I just assumed was up in flames as soon as it started. Not like DFS flames, but like actually like lighting money on fire flames. But like I've talked about this a lot. Like I bought a bunch of Villanova cards and I submitted a 5-player Villanova lineup this week in limited champion. I was going to do it in contender, but the guys are too good, man. So I had to play them in champion. But like
Right.
I'm going in against like the Giannis's and the Doncic's lineups, and like my best player is like Mikal Bridges, and I'm like, I'm not going to win this week, but I'm going for it. And it's
Right.
like that's like the definition of casually playing this game. And if you're willing to, like, it could happen, they could pop off. It's still like really early in terms of like the number of people who are competing. So like I was like, if I end up with a tier 5 limited, like, cool.
So be it.
That could be a cheat code sooner or later, you know? And so when the game launched, I was like, casuals are dead. And I don't think that way anymore, though I do think that they're at a significant disadvantage, particularly if they're playing contender, just because like that's where you need to find the values and the guys who are going to like greatly outperform their L10s.
It's actually funny, right? Because when they like launched it, you were like, okay, contender is just where you just go kind of like to screw around, so to speak. And actually that's champion, because you don't
exactly.
If you just, you know, are like trying to like let it ride, so to speak, just don't get too many good guys. Just get like your favorite players like you just did, and you'll always be under the cap in champion. You know, if you just get a lot of middle tier players, like you're going to be fine. I think you kind of turned me around there, especially to the fact that like a tier 4 could actually be like the value of a tier 2 any given week. Like, you know, if you just kind of hold on, or, you know, if you're a casual, just holding on to the cards that you accumulate then could actually give you better lineups when the players' roles change. You know, I joked about Memphis, you know, not this version of Memphis, but Memphis a few years back, literally it was every single season in DFS. When March came, Memphis had 6 guys left. And like everybody on Memphis's team were elite players because they just had to get the shots. Like Dylan Brooks was like scoring like 30 real points a night, things like that. Tyus Jones, those type of guys. So you can just kind of wait sometimes, and you know, some of those rewards may turn into pretty darn good players anyways for the game.
It does feel like tier 5. Well, 5 may be a little aggressive, but like it does feel like lower tier rewards or lower tier players have a faster path to potentially being.
Yep.
I don't think they're going to be tier 1s, but like they could turn into players who could help you win tier 1s a lot more than soccer. That like tier 3 in
for sure.
soccer, you're just like, I'm going to have this card forever, or I'm going to sell it for $1 because this 38-year-old center back who's already in the second division probably isn't going to help me much. But in the NBA, like everything just moves so fast, and we've seen guys like Cam Thomas who like basically something happens. I don't even want to go into why he ended up playing, but basically like weird things happen and guys like him become like ultra valuable. And the cool thing with these situations is when they become valuable, like they're valuable in the game if you play them, or they're valuable and you can sell them. And it's like a total win. And I think that's actually one of the coolest aspects about NBA.
And I was going to say one of the harder things for the casual player, I think, is say you have a set dollar amount, you come onto the platform and you're like, I'm going to buy 5 guys, and you buy 5 really good guys, then the hard thing becomes being able to field a team, because those guys are going to price themselves out of their L10. And unless you're playing like a 79 L10, then all of a sudden, like, you have to go buy more players. But if you win, those guys actually become usable in that situation. And that is the cool part. Like, to be able to win something that you can't immediately use sometimes. And if things are going the right way, you have to use them. That's one of my favorite things about the whole thing.
So someone, Say Sorare brought it up. I think it's Sorare.
Yep. I like that.
So it's a good tactic to be like Pavel Trader in that getting a lot of bench players, especially direct handcuffs. That's not really the NBA term, but basically that. Knowing that more than likely they'll be flippable, playable at some point. I don't want to say more than likely. Like there are lots of players in the NBA who like are not playing right now and probably won't play all season.
You need to know what needs to happen. Like I did a little short video, like, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago about, when these teams start tanking, here could be like 5 guys that don't really have a big role now, but have the road to a really big role.
Is the Jeremiah Robinson Earl All-Stars?
Right. Well, like one of my favorites on there is Nikola Alexander Walker for Utah, who is barely in the rotation right now, but it's a guy for the Pelicans. In the past, we've seen when he got run, he loves to shoot. Those type of guys are good. The guys that aren't afraid to shoot the ball are always pretty good targets. And so he can drop like 30 real points in a game. So I kind of speculate that is. So what I love about that question, though, is that actually kind of ties into roller coaster prices. So I'm going to flip this to you guys. I think yes to that answer is those are the type of players to target. But then I go, there's also, I don't necessarily want to tell you that's what you should be doing because of the volatility in prices. I would almost rather you put your money or whatever balance you have towards making your teams the most competitive and then just trying to stay just a little bit ahead of the game. I think if we tie too much into, stashing players, like we really don't know what the price is. Like we don't know what an efficient price for Jokic is. Like we think we might. Like there was a question way earlier too, should prices stabilize? Yes, they're going to stabilize at some point, but I don't think there's nobody that can really tell us definitively what a Nikola Jokic rare out of 1,000 should be because it's just too early.
I think that's a really good point. And the one thing that I've been trying to also say to other people is that like what we think we know from football really doesn't help us in NBA. Like just in terms of like the market, that like the best scoring players rare card is 10th in football. And so like Giannis rare should be 10th here. And it has nothing to do with the fact that a rare football card is out of 100 and the NBA one is out of 1,000. But like, we just don't know. And like, as much as people are like, there are so many cards, they're auctioning so many. And it's like, we still, like you said, we don't know what an efficient price is for these guys. And so I haven't seen much content about like, here are 5 underpriced guys, because like, I don't think anyone is like bold enough to do that, especially as prices are going down. But I do think that there are like value opportunities.
Yep.
And I don't like, if you can put in that work, then like, I think you can take advantage of that. I don't have time to put that work in. And so I kind of like rely on others, but like those situations are possible. And so if you're going out and like buying Durant or Damian Lillard and you're like, man, my card is worth half that it was a week ago, I'm just not sure. Like that's not where you make like your biggest returns, at least in terms of value. Like those are the cards that help you win rewards. Those are not the cards that you buy to like flip because they'll be worth double in a week and a half.
Yeah. And to your point too, because we don't know that like valuation aspect, that's why I wouldn't really want to like stash guys if I'm also concerned about my value, because we don't have that floor established at all.
Right. Like
I think it's okay to pick up those guys because you need them, or you think you're about to need them in a week, or you think that Utah's about to start, or that's like a bad example with Nah, but like you're just like, okay, Embiid's going to sit it anytime soon, or I think they're going to change up the rotation and Montrezl Harrell is going to get more run. that's a speculation, like if it's going to be in the short term. But I would be really, really worried about buying guys for February right now. I would want to like keep an eye. Right. It's just too far away on that. What do you think, Alex?
I wouldn't do, because I mean buyouts are a thing. The trade deadline gets wild, and then all of a sudden, like I think there's one thing where you can look at bad teams like, all right, Mike Conley's 37, he can contribute to a title winner, and Colin Sexton would benefit if he gets traded. Same with Jordan Clarkson. So like buy Colin Sexton. But yeah, if you're like, oh, I'm going to buy Embiid's backup because what if he gets hurt before they go to the playoffs, and all of a sudden, I don't know who is if Tobias Harris all of a sudden is going to have all this run. I mean, maybe they go get a buyout backup center. So I wouldn't do that personally. I will say though, like guys right now, like at the high end, because you're going to see ebbs and flows there too. Like Anthony Davis is half the price of Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, and can put up those same sort of scores on the same L10. Damian Lillard got hurt and his price went way down. LeBron has been, I don't know that LeBron's the best example, because I don't know that anything's going to get better for the Lakers. And I don't know that he's exactly at his peak either, but like his price is down because he's putting up 45 points on a 59 L10 or whatever it is. So like he's worthless. He is my worst common card, and I was so excited to win him. If you've ever seen the way that I look at him, and I like those are real flipping opportunities. It doesn't cost you a whole lot to go get an Anthony Davis right now, like 0.03, 0.035 for these two guys.
But what I like about like the Anthony Davis out there is I can also use Davis right now. And we kind of were talking about, God, who did we just use as like, a bad example? Keegan Murray. Okay, so like here's why Keegan Murray was so bad in a lot of ways, is because Keegan Murray on the Kings, he is at best the third option. And he's more likely the fourth or fifth, because you got De'Aaron Fox is going to get his shots, and then you got Sabonis, which are going to get his. Those guys are always coming before in the pecking order to Keegan Murray. So at best, Keegan Murray's the third best player, which he's probably not even that. Kevin Huerter is there and commands a lot of shots, got paid a lot of money. So the upside for Murray isn't there as a fourth or fifth option. Anthony Davis is an alpha, right? Anthony Davis is going to be either the number one or the number two, deciding if LeBron James actually cares to play tonight. And Anthony Davis can drop 60 or 70. Keegan Murray, if he drops 60 or 70, I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, how did that happen? With Anthony Davis drops 60 or 70, you go, okay. He's the former, we thought he was a top 5 player not too long ago. So I think that those are the type of players we really need to kind of focus on. I think, Laird, you were even joking about me in a DM. Like, that's the type of list that you want to see, is the guys that can really, really, really spike hard.
What are you doing?
Don't worry. Secrets get disclosed. But the point remains, like, look at all those upsides, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, for sure.
And his path there is so much easier than like him specifically, like these high volume guys who play defense. The path is so much faster to those peak scores with defenders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't want to say we're at fault for this, but I'm going to say it just to start this. But we were talking like on the first show about how many like really good trading opportunities are in NBA. And maybe we didn't explain enough that it was not on the stars. Like the stars are not the good trading opportunities, unless
That's a great point.
Unless someone gets hurt and they get really cheap, and then you're like, oh, well, when he comes back, he'll be worth a lot more. And you can like do that. Like we were saying, when Lillard got hurt for a few games, when Harden got hurt, like right away, his price like tanked. And it's like, this guy's still good. And if you're willing to wait the month while he's out, I will say that Sorare did a pretty good job of stopping those auctions pretty quickly, though. I think DeAndre Ayton, when he got hurt, the auction stopped. And I remember like watching his price come down, and I was like, he's getting to a point where, and like, I actually really don't even like DeAndre Ayton. but like it got to a point where the price was just too low for what he can do. Like, where did he get?
They probably have a red button on the wall that says "Stop Aiden auctions."
I mean, you could have gotten
It does feel like
an Aiden card for $13, and like he's better than that. Like he's not the best player in the NBA, but he's better than that. And so I think those are the situations you can take advantage of. But when people are going in and buying Doncic and Jokic and Morant, and they're like, man, I'm not able to flip this card. These guys are the best players in the game. And it's like, they're the best players in the NBA.
Right.
They're not necessarily the best players in this game, this like fantasy game. I mean, they score the most. So I'll give it that. But like none of like what we're doing in this game is a pure like like a singular focus on that player. Like if you decide that you're going to take the 60-point L10 hit for Giannis, then you got to think that your other 4 guys are good.
Not in champion.
Right, not in champion. You're right. If you want to play Giannis and Doncic, then one of like it's a lineup. It's not this guy is good, so I'm going to play him all the time. And so I think maybe we just didn't like emphasize enough that like the trading opportunities are for guys that you have not heard of, as opposed to the guys it's everyone.
Cam Thomas, Keegan Murray. Have you gotten Keegan Murray before it was cared about? I mean, I'm trying to think of all the Bismack Biyombo we've seen have a huge.
Biyombo prices were so funny.
I mean,
for Aiden.
Yeah, well, and Laird, we almost had this one. Me and you both got on it right when the news happened. But Dwayne Dedman almost was like a huge one when we thought Bam was going to miss. Well, Bam still. Here's just like the really interesting thing too. Let me just make this point about some of these flip cards. If you buy a guy for a flip and it doesn't happen, wait, because like a lot of the guys that we think like okay, so like Dwayne Dedman, direct backup for Bam Adebayo. Laird, if you go to his SO5 scores, can you just like go as far out as you can? We're going to see some huge spikes on there. Okay, there's some greens, but way back there.
Damn.
So like I can remember from DFS, those are when like Bam missed because he can go like hard because he blocks shots, gets a lot of boards. If you missed it and like Bam plays, just chill out. Bam's going to miss a game or two and that chance will come back. Like don't just all of a sudden, you bought the guy for I don't know, $10 and now he's worth $5 type of thing. Like that's the one where I'm going to say, even though we don't know what prices are going to be, just hold on. You might still get that $20 to $30 opportunity when Bam's out before a deadline and everybody's rushing to get DD.
So I'm thrilled that you brought this up, particularly Dedman. It has nothing to do with the fact that I snap bought a rare and a limited and have not
I did too.
For him. However, so like this run up on Dedman was
I didn't even know there was a run up. I didn't even know that happened. I thought we like yours was
probably here.
We didn't. Yeah,
you're probably in here and I waited. However, like Dwayne Dedman's never going to be like an all-star. He's never going to have an L10 of 40. Like he's just not going to like no matter how long Adebayo's out, he's not getting there.
Right.
And he's not even out. But this is what happens on the news that Adebayo could miss. And as you can see, like I didn't sell out of it like I could have. I don't want to say I didn't try, but I did. But the price came back down because Adebayo didn't miss any time. And it's like, all right, so it went back to normal. Dedman is now back to being, I mean, how much does this card cost? $3? Not even?
Funny.
$2.59 for the last one.
Right.
But as you said, like Bam Adebayo is probably going to miss a game. And if we know this like by a deadline, like we've seen what happens.
Shoot back up.
And so it can shoot right back up. Yeah. And so that almost like now this sounds like, well, let's go buy all these garbage players. But like if you can stomach that, like this is where you triple your money.
I think it's all about a budget too, right? Like when we just talk about like run out and buy, like if you have a limitless budget and like this is fun for you, we did talk about like I started out talking about as a game, like go have fun. Like if that's gonna bring you joy and like you're like, oh man, like got him, Now let me wait for the news. Like, go for it. I think we're more talking to the same people that are also worried about price so much that maybe, just buying tons of backups and buying your time, that's not going to exactly remedy the bleeding that you're feeling right now.
The people who couldn't hold a good card for more than 8 hours.
Right. The guy that, bought Kevin. I mean, Laird looked it up for me, but I bought a Kevin Durant rare today from somebody for 0.19 ETH or whatever. And I think the guy bought him yesterday for 0.26 or 0.27. Yeah. It's kind of like, what changed? Like, did you even get a chance to use the card?
No chance.
Tough.
Yeah. I don't. I've seen a lot of that, and it's like sad, a lot of the actually buying for 300 and selling for 250 today because something happened that makes them think this isn't good anymore. And I was going to say something else before. Now I completely lost it.
It's okay.
All right. But there is a question in the chat that I'd like to ask you guys, because even though I don't think there's a reasonable answer for this.
Great questions.
When do you think prices go up again? And do they go even higher than what we saw?
Go ahead, Hoop. I'll Hoop.
What we saw, no, because what we saw was the number one mints, but the higher end of the come down, I don't know, the All-Star break, when they finally start putting TV ads out for this sort of thing, I guess that's kind of what I've been saying. I was so hopeful that we were going to see an ad per inning break during the MLB playoffs, and they were tweeting out pictures of like the sideboards at the stadiums that just said like Sorare, like anybody knew what it was outside of us nerds. But no, it's when the user base grows,
right?
Like
exactly.
It's when the user base grows, and all of a sudden that growth starts, and then it kind of starts to halt, and then the auctions start to halt, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, the guys that I bought when I got on this platform aren't going to help me win. I need X, Y, and Z at a lower L10 to kind of try and leverage it. Yeah. Everyone's going to go through the growing pains that we all kind of went through, but it's just about getting people on the platform. And yeah, like rising tide raises all ships, right? Like that's how we get there.
Yeah, I think fundamentally there are players on the platform that you buy to play in the game, and then there are those that you trade. And the more that we play, the more obvious it becomes which players are which. Like Giannis is not the card you buy to flip.
Right.
Like I don't know what, like I don't see what happens to Giannis that everyone is like, oh, I really need a Giannis now. Other than, well, I guess this situation is that he is so much like if Doncic gets hurt and Jokic and like everyone who could possibly score 60 gets hurt and he's the only one left, like that's when everyone's like, oh, now I need a Giannis. But like,
right.
I just don't think I don't think there is a mechanism in this game where we go back to, 0.4 for a limited Giannis is not happening again. Like it's just, I don't see why it would get there. Like that's basically double its price right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a buy that high to get in that early to win rewards that early and hope they make your price back sort of price. Yeah. But whether or not that actually happens, I am excited to see, like I can't think of who the last person was in the NBA to do this, but again, we're still so early in the cycle of just the NBA, but I want to see who that guy is who goes from like a 19-20 L10 guy and just turns into a superstar in the league who actually has staying power, and what that graph starts to look like. Like,
yeah,
if say Jeremy Lin sustained Linsanity levels, so like he just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I think that would be very interesting to see. Not that answers the question or anything, but like there's still so many other wrinkles that we're kind of yet to experience. And if hype runs into hype, like if hype on the platform runs into a hype player, there's going to be some crazy prices there too.
So can I make a comment and then ask a question later? Are you cool with it?
Free for all, man.
Okay. Your show. So I want to make sure I'm not overstating. So I saw it like a few times in the chat, but I think comparing NBA to football or MLB to basketball or any of the cross three, I just don't think is a good mechanism, because we don't know that NBA couldn't be bigger than football. We don't know that football is as big as Sorare is ever going to get. I don't think there's any way to notice. So I wouldn't even like compare, Luka to Kimmich prices. Like, even if it's like limited or rares, I just don't. I think it's just kind of like a trap exercise for your mind, and there's not really a correct thing. So that's my comment. But my question, because we only have a few minutes, either one of y'all have this is going to be a strategy question more than prices. Have either one of y'all feel like you understand what the right champion build is? Meaning, I feel like I've been falling into this. All right, I need a stud at MVP, and then kind of trying to do upper echelon players from there on out. And if I have like a punt, great. And if not, just trying to find like last week was like Levert. Mitchell and Garland were out before. I thought Levert was going to smash those type. Like, do we think it's studs and duds or studs and cheat codes, or do we think it's balanced guys that can go off? Either one of y'all have a feeling on that?
I think so. I put out a video about guys who are like long-term holds, and
like a steady Eddie, I think you call it, right?
Yeah, the way I kind of pegged them into that category is they're essentially high floor guys with high ceilings. So Giannis and Luka, but they were all guys who were above league average in shot volume, like field goal percentage, and also defense. I think if you play three of those guys, like if you can fit Luka and Giannis into an MVP build and not have the worst time ever building a lineup.
Right.
But there's something to be said for guys who are just cold and can blow up. Like DeMar DeRozan, if you look at his game scores, he's like 26 or like 61. And I think those guys I think they're going to find their ways into that studs and duds type of build. Like, look at the difference on those. That would frustrate the hell out of me. But like when he pops off,
he can win you a week.
Yeah, like a 67 or that 62. Like what? Just looking at the games around that, his L10 was probably about 30.
That's Levine being out too.
Sure, and that's going to happen more too. But
a lot.
But there are going to be guys who are high shot volume guys who don't do a whole lot else. See, like 46 points and a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists. They're going to have those ceiling games where they've been cold and all of a sudden their L10 is like down in the 30s. And I think that's how you get there. I think you need to take big swings with guys, but like playing like Colin Sexton was a guy we thought would be that guy, but his scores are all like his L10 is 20 and he's like 21, 23, 19.
But he doesn't
21.
get enough minutes.
Not yet.
He doesn't get minutes.
But when he does, then all of a sudden he like is going to be a DeRozan type guy. And immediately that, like as soon as Mike Conley gets traded, I know I made that point a couple of times already, but like I think it's that. Is it going to be the best build over time and win every single week? No, but I think Giannis, Luka, a guy like Nick Claxton, who is on a 31, plays a ton of defense, and all of a sudden, Ben Simmons is out and he unlocks the upside. And then a couple of these guys who just can take advantage of stunted L10s because they can just go off like crazy. And there's plenty of those guys, but they're going to frustrate the hell out of you along the way.
I like it. What do you think, Laird?
I love that you brought DeRozan up because he's exactly the kind of player that wins this game. Like, you're not going to always win with him, but like he feels like the type of player. Where is he now? L10 of 33, which like the more I build, 33 is like you can probably get like he could be like your fourth stud if you have like a cheat code. Mm-hmm. And so the
Kuminga.
So like.
But you use a Kuminga to get them all.
Right, exactly. So it's like, does Kuminga and DeRozan, if DeRozan can drop a 60, like, is that worth it? And I don't think we've seen nearly enough game weeks to like figure out what works. Yeah. What I do think is that it's going to be like highly, highly dependent on the cheat code every week. Like if the cheat code is an L10 of 12 that week, and it's not, and that, which is not really a cheat code, then it's like, then everyone's lineups just aren't as good because like you can't fit in all of those. If there's like a literal cheat code and, you know, it's somebody, Kuminga is the guy and he drops 20 on like an L10 of 2, like you're going to have like more powerful lineups. And so I don't think there's ever going to be like a, this is how you do it, because like we just don't know what the L10s are going to be ahead of time. And so you can kind of project it if you think, oh, this guy's out, he'll come back. But I have like been focusing on a lot of guys like DeRozan in that like 30 to 40 range, that it's like, can he really go off? Like my favorite one is Devin Booker. And
it's a good one.
Booker's
especially
probably
now tonight,
like, Booker's
with
38, so this is actually a little higher.
No Paul tonight.
And now no Chris Paul, who I have, so that like just salt in the wound there. Like he hasn't actually been that great this year, Booker, yet. But like we know he can have big games. And so he's almost too efficient, unlike DeRozan. Like DeRozan, if he takes like 38 shots, you're just like, yeah, it's tomorrow night. Yeah, let's just go. Yeah. Like I'm not sure Booker's taking 38 shots any night, but
depending on who's missing, maybe.
That's fair.
Here are my top projections around the DeRozan L10, like in that 30 range. You got DeRozan, Alperen Sengun, Jared Allen, Nicholas Claxton, Isaiah Hartenstein, Bol, your boy Josh Hart, Kevin Love. Like those guys can't do what DeRozan can do. No. Those are all the high floor guys. Sengun and Claxton were in my video, and Jared Allen had 55 the other night.
But Jared Allen can show up with 9 blocks. Like those are the interesting
20
guys.
Rebounds the other night.
Right. So what's hysterical about the way you guys answered that question is exactly how I didn't want you to answer, because it's what I'm doing and not being successful with it. So it's like you guys are like validating my process that I'm undergoing that has not been successful. But I'm like, it's probably too small of a sample.
I was going to say, I don't think you can look at anything right now and be like, this doesn't work. Like if you make a lineup and you have, 30 L10 points left, I really wish we could like figure out what we're calling this, scoring cap points or whatever the hell it is. If you have 30 left over, like you probably shouldn't run that lineup. Like I do think
unless you're just trying to let it go, like you just talked about earlier, unless it's like a let it go lineup.
Sure. Yeah. So Mike Basson brought up Javon Carter. Like he's a popular one that people have been playing that like has grossly outperformed his L10. But I just don't think that we're necessarily, I mean, we're absolutely too early to like be like, this is the strategy that works. Like the strategy that works is like, go get the guy who had an L10 of 0 that scored 26. Go get him, and then I think you will do well. And it's like, that just doesn't happen every week. And so we don't know, like, I don't like the way the NBA plays. I don't think there will ever be like this is how you have to play champion. Other than I do think you need to have like at least one like legit elite star, but you like, I feel like I've been slightly vindicated, but because it's such a small sample, but like when everyone's like, you have to have one of Giannis, Doncic, or Jokic. And it's like, you don't yet, but like, obviously they help tremendously certainly in champion.
They help smooth out the curve because, some days you don't fire right on your Devin Booker when he's in that spot, but then some weeks you do. So I wanted to do a real quick Javon Carter thing because I just heard this on a pod yesterday. I thought it was awesome. So Javon Carter is actually a great shout for anybody on here still. So he's been starting. They had debated Wes Matthews coming in, and supposedly Budenholzer threatened Javon Carter that he was going to lose his starting spot if he didn't start shooting more. Like he was just passing up too many open shots. And so Javon Carter was like, okay. And then that night he took like 13 shots, and Budenholzer was like, okay, you can keep playing. So like if you ever get like any inside shit. Well, yeah, exactly. It's the whole thing. Like, it's great that you're playing with Jrue Holiday and Giannis and Brook Lopez, and when he gets healthy, Chris Middleton, but you can't be a 0 on the court. You just can't, hide in the corner. You need to, when you get the shot, pass up. So I think Javon Carter is like a great shout, and Milwaukee's missing everybody tonight, so he's going to get a bit of a extended run, to say the least.
And what's his score look like? What's his price graph look like?
Oh yeah, that'd be great to see.
Because I'm pretty sure sell now. Yeah, it's not really up.
No, it's not really popped.
No, see that's the
nice
thing.
price.
It's like anytime. So like Carter, yeah, he was great. 7 L10 for a while. He was playing 23, 23, 23, and I have found that anytime I have a guy like that, and all of a sudden I'm like, all right, time to get out. It's already happened.
Right.
Yeah.
It goes the opposite way too. Like same with the guys who you think you're getting ahead of the curve with. Like, yeah, I found a cheat code, and I go look. I'm like, all right, everyone's already bought him. when I have a guy, I'm like, all right, I bought him as a cheat code, and he's kind of starting to hit that point. Like, it's already gone.
Yeah, I think it's just you have to buy them before they're cheat codes.
Yeah,
like
or before everybody like. I think if you have the knowledge of seeing an injury happens that day, like, so I think sorry, this is like a scrambled way. I'm getting on track, but I think the real easy way to actually get the best cheat codes is to get the guys in the middle of the game week. So like, I think that there's a lot of concentration on who's out the night before or the day before the game week locks. But like Damian Lee is one that I talked to Laird about last night. And he really didn't have a run up even last night. I think today you told me he's getting some churn. But there was actually well, nobody kind of really realized it too, that he was the biggest Cam Johnson benefit because Torrey Craig started.
His price are all over the place.
Yeah, it's kind of all over. So there's not really a run up on him, so to speak. But I think if you can find those guys in the middle of a game week, that all of a sudden the role changes. Like one that I missed on, I heard on a podcast today, not so related, but was AJ Griffin for Atlanta, played a ton of minutes. He was our first round pick this year. It's the first time he's played extended minutes, and he just absolutely went off. I'm a little concerned about that kind of guy because it's only one game sample. Look, you're seeing a little bit of a boost on him. Okay,
Market seems to disagree with your only one game.
Well, look at his SO5 scores, Laird, and look at the minutes. I always look at minutes first. Minutes to me are the biggest sign of anything.
Yeah.
So you only have one game there, and he went off. And then I also look at the score, and I go, it's a blowout. I didn't watch the game, so was it because he blew out, or did he help it blow out? Like, was it him that caused it? Those are the hard things. But if you're watching a game and you see a guy getting an extended run, or you see a rotational change, if you can get in that, and if you ask yourself, like, oh, why hasn't this guy blown up? That was the time to buy it. Because I think by the next day, the market does lag a little bit still.
Yeah.
Because there are so many cards out there at any given time. I think there is a little bit of a lag there. What we did see, there was no lag though, was what was it? Was it last Friday? The Warriors all got ruled out. What was it, like 2 or 3 o'clock?
Yeah. And
Kuminga, Moody, and then Jordan Poole, all just full. Dude, you can do Poole too. Kuminga, I think you'll get the big old middle thing. There it is, right there. I mean, those that one just almost became too obvious because the Warriors just ruled out everybody.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't like they just ruled out Steph. They ruled out Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Wiggins. So it's like, pick anybody. Pick any of the guys. Like, they're all going to get big boosts. There's no wrong answer here. But there's your little middle finger graph.
Yeah.
And I just rambled, but I hope I got to some sort of point there.
No. And it reminded me of something that we talked about, because I was saying to you that it felt like the best time to buy players was right after the deadline, because
100%.
like there's a run up, and then with all these auctions, everyone's like, all right, I have my players. And so like the next auctions are always really cheap. And you were like, you can't always do that though, because the news that happens like throughout the game week will help determine who you want in the next game week. So like, just because you got someone cheap after their run up doesn't mean that they're going to pop back up or get worse, or, or their L10 pops, or whatever it is that, like, yeah, you got this card for less than what people were paying for it a few hours ago, but it's also not a card you want to play anymore, or or the new price where you got them is their price now because they're not a cheat code anymore. They're not, or they're just like situations change. And so, or they get hurt, like even that can happen. And so
that's the worst.
It is kind of this weird.
Blake Wesley.
Yeah.
Only one I bought.
That was the
only one I bought.
Yeah.
That one was pure because that was actually the next Keegan because he was actually at 0 L10.
Yeah. Now he's
and
at 11 too.
He tears his knee.
Yeah.
And
as you can see, they stopped selling. So like all of these purple ones are public offers. So these are like cards that are bought off the market. So they were purchased here and sold here, just people snap buying them off, and then he tears his knee, and it's like, and obviously they have stopped the auctions as of like a week ago because nobody's going to buy a guy with a torn ACL or whatever it is. So
yeah,
we did less strategy than I was expecting. So I'm going to probably just sign you guys up for more of these. If you guys don't mind, we'll just run it back. We'll figure that out. But thank you to everybody who has joined us live, particularly those people. If you guys would please hit the like button. It's always really helpful. If you could also kind of share this video with people that, if you've liked it and you can say, hey, I really like this video, trying to get this SorareData NBA channel up and running. I know it's not going to be as big as football yet, but if you guys could do that, that's always really appreciated. And if you are watching the replay, you can do the same thing. Or if you're listening to the audio version, if you could rate and review it. It is on the same feed as our football podcast, just because it was a little easier. But there's an icon that's different, looks different. So you're not going to be like, hey, I don't want this NBA stuff. It's easy to change, to ignore it, or you can ignore the football stuff if you want. It's all there for you. So guys, thank you so much for this, and good luck trying to figure out this crazy game, man.
Yep. Good luck, everybody.